Welcome, everybody, to another live recording of the Business Travel 360 Linking the Travel Industry podcast, where we talk about travel industry news you are talking about right here on LinkedIn. My name is Rian, and I'm one of your hosts today. I'm a co-founder at Agentivity, where we ensure TMCs operate as efficiently as possible. So if that sounds of interest, please do get in touch. As usual, I'm joined by Anne and Ash to help me talk through a list of stories. Over to you, Anne.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Anne. I'm an independent consultant with LeapShift and happy to help you if you have any questions related to distribution, like NDC, one order, and what have you. So over to you, Ash.
Thanks, Anne. Hi, everyone. My name is Ash. I'm the host of a weekly business travel podcast called What's Up in Business Travel, where we give you important updates in under 15 minutes. Additionally, I'm the Vice President of Client Success at Traxo, and this is Linking the Travel Industry.
So, Ash, you are wearing this shirt and you've got the tagline there, but from all of us, congratulations to Spain on their World Cup win of yesterday. What an epic game. So I see you say you can move on to regular football. What does that mean?
Well, the NFL season is kicking off in August, so we can move on to regular football.
Okay, cool. If you are new to the event, the format of this discussion is a quick, non-biased, and ideally spontaneous review of the previous week's top LinkedIn travel industry stories. We do love to hear from you, so if there's anything we discuss that you want to comment on, please do give us that comment and we'll bring it on screen. So last week was week 28 already, and we start the list of stories with the news that Booking Holdings is forming a new B2B unit that will bring together Booking.com, Agoda, and Priceline to focus on their B2B relationships, and it's going to be run by the current Agoda CEO, a guy called Omio. Interesting move. I mean, we know that they are quite active already and successful in the B2B, but it's interesting to see them bring this all together in a formalized sort of direction. And of course, they're taking on some of the other big names in here, which is also focusing on the B2B. Personally, from my side, B2B in the travel sense and what suppliers understand of the needs of corporate buyers is not great. So it's good to see that there's some focus and attention on this. And what did you make of this story?
They clearly want to become Expedia. I really wonder how big the scope is, because there are some pieces that they are missing, right? But I understand that they're making some big changes and recruiting lots of people. It's much more than the brand alignment. That's your understanding as well, right?
It is, yes. And it is obviously to get those things to talk better to one another and to be a more comprehensive single offering, because it is a bit scattered at the moment. And it's a huge potential market, right? The B2B market. But Ash, any thoughts on this?
Yes, I have lots of thoughts on this, actually. So I don't think they're trying to become Expedia. I think they've already decided they're way beyond Expedia for sure. I think what they're trying to do, Rian, is that they're trying to build an infrastructure where a GDS is no longer needed for B2B sales. What we've seen is that the Booking Holdings company has penetrated the B2B model in many, many ways. So what they're looking to do now is to take the pieces of air, hotel, rail, and build an infrastructure by which an agent or an agency can service a customer without even having access to or even needing access to a GDS. If you look at the pieces that they need is inventory, payments, and other things like that, technology, all of that is built into these companies. So once they merge these into a single application, then all of a sudden you have yourself a infrastructure where I don't need to have access to Sabre or Travelport or Amadeus. I can just go to Booking and make all the reservations for my customers and net out a lot of revenue for myself, way beyond what I would do if I booked that same thing through the GDS channel. So I think that there's something that they're doing here that's really special. Everything Booking does play out the way they want it. So why would this not?
Yeah, you are mentioning B2B to B there effectively because you mentioned the agent in that picture. Do you think that is the intention? Do you know that, or is it just guessing?
Guessing educational.
If it was me, if I was Booking Holdings, I would just go corporate can book with me.
Well, they can. I mean, they did with Booking for Business. So Booking for Business is exactly that. And they have created such a large volume of SMB customer base that I think now what they're doing is they're saying that the way I'm going to penetrate the large customers is through the agency model. Okay. And the one thing the agents are really not feeling good about is their inventory and content within the GDSs. So here comes Booking with all the content. And, now all of a sudden, if you're an agent, you can say, hey, I can get you the prices of Priceline. I can get you the content of Booking.com all in one single place. I think that it's a win.
very strong, because what we are hearing from the corporates is that some of the larger agents, because they can't integrate these flows today, they say no to that content, which is a frustration for some of the buyers. So yeah, that's a very strong move. Air Baltic is facing growing financial pressure, and they may require some additional funding to remain viable, and this comes out of the Latvian government. So are they going to get a bailout? And just keep in mind, the elections are coming up, so maybe they will, right?
It's like, here we go again. What is this? Round 55. They really need rethinking of the whole thing. But I guess the bet is still on Lufthansa, isn't it? The question is, what about the timing of that with the current ongoing situation?
And isn't Lufthansa a little bit distracted with ITA inspired by Alitalia?
They own 10% of Air Baltic, remember?
Yes.
So the question is, are they going to save them, bail them out, or what's going to happen to those 10%? They're going to sell it to someone. And something I do know is that there are 2 airlines in Europe that use leasing of aircraft at really not very profitable levels, and that is Wizz Air and Air Baltic. So when I say that they should really start looking at all the processes within the airline, that is a must.
And we know that Michael O'Leary is predicting that there will be 2 European airlines folding this year still, so this could be one of them.
Yes.
Little fun story of the week, really. This is the banter, if you want, between, the airline Norwegian and British Airways. They were challenging each other to, if the one wins the other, they should change their social media image for the day or the logo on the social media platform. And that's exactly what happened, because England won Norway in a 2-1 victory. And so Norwegian kept their promise, and they've updated their profile picture on their Instagram account to be the British Airways logo. Personally, I think this is stupid, but that's just me. At least they kept to their promise. So, Ash, do you like this sort of thing?
I love this sort of thing. So you make a bet, you lose, and you man up, and you show that you're a person of your word, and you can live with it. I think this is great for Norwegian. The only bad thing is that they're putting up a logo of an airline that's got all sorts of issues. So maybe they should have placed that bet with another country whose airline was a much better product.
I just want to clarify, I'm not against, make a bet and stick to it and earn up to it. That part I love, but I think the whole thing here is a bit stupid because, if you're a Norwegian customer and you suddenly see this on the app, it's all very confusing. And like you say, British Airways logo when you're flying Norwegian.
Yeah, I mean, that was the only downside. I don't know if they could have placed a bet with another country with a better airline from all the games that they played. This brings a lot of humanism to Norwegian. Kind of shows that, hey, we're regular people, and we're going to do things that are funny, and maybe we'll make a mistake and we'll live with it, that kind of thing. I think it humanizes the airline quite a bit, and it's probably a good reflection of the people that work there, right, where they can laugh and have a good time and not get all uptight and what have you. So I think from that perspective, I think it's good.
And plus, here we are talking about Norwegian, which we don't normally do, right? And were you surprised they went through and did it?
No, they will stick to their word. I'm not surprised at all. They would be criticized a big time if they didn't. They have to man up. To me, it was a good marketing stunt. It was fun and a bit of fun in all of this. I mean, they've never been so excited about football ever, in history. So it was a fun thing.
Hey, now if England had lost, then British Airways would have to put the Norwegian logo up, right?
Yes.
Now, I think that would receive a lot of kudos because finally everybody who has issues with British Airways will be like, thank God this has happened.
Okay, guys, let's move on. We're not done. I just want to turn to the audience for a second and say thank you so much for giving us your time on a Monday. The room is nicely packed, so stay with us. We've got a few more stories to cover. And we also would like to hear from you as to where you're listening to us from. So do give us a shout out and we'll put your name on screen because ultimately we would like to get more of us to be connected to one another. So whilst we wait for that, Ash, I'm just going to ask you the same question Kenneth is asking you there. Why do you guys call it football when it's not played with your foot?
Because we're Americans and we can say anything we want.
Okay, there you go, Kenneth. That's the answer. So there you go. But anyway, seriously, if you want to just give us a comment as to where you're listening from, we'll bring your name on screen and we can say hi to you from this side as well. So thank you so much. Let's get back to our stories. I love this next story. This story is about the airport at Bratislava. I'm not going to try and pronounce it, although the name doesn't sound too difficult, Letisko Stefanica. But the airport at Bratislava effectively They are recording triple-digit passenger growth every month for quite some time now, and it's basically made them the number one airport in Europe in terms of passenger growth. And the reason, the most obvious reason, as I saw in this post by the aviation journalist Martin Dichler, is simply that they've eliminated air traffic tax and they've made it very attractive for airlines to operate there, as opposed to our friends at Schiphol and other airports. So isn't this just a fantastic story, Anne?
I know, it's just great, isn't it? It really shows that you can be this kind of small airport in a very, very tiny country and very much needed. It'll be very interesting to follow the development of this.
Yeah, and they've announced 50 million euros of further investment. I've traveled through that airport quite a bit. It's a lovely airport. It's very, very modern, and it's just so easy to use. It is on the small side, so I'm glad to hear they are investing.
Yeah.
So Ash, should the guys at Schiphol take a bit of a look at the story?
I think so. The thing that they're trying to aim for here is the short distance between Vienna Airport and Bratislava Airport, right? And
yes.
I've been to Slovakia, believe it or not, Rian and Anne. So
wow.
I'm very familiar with that distance. I've actually driven that distance of Vienna Airport. Very few times I get to say something like that. So I'm taking advantage of it right now. But for the people that live in Slovakia, this is a big win. So for them, they had to travel outside of their own country to take a trip because the dependency on Vienna was so much. It shows that if you want the airlines to respond to your country or to your airport, all you got to do is just make it easy for them and they'll respond immediately. This is a pretty quick turnaround for the airlines to just say, okay, you've done this. I'm going to take advantage of it right now. I'm not going to wait for another 6 months or 12 months to do this. I'm going to do it right now. That's pretty impressive.
And think of all the money flowing through there now, jobs and parking and all that servicing and all that stuff is just so much more than the tax they might have earned. We've got a few shout-outs. Kat, thank you for giving us a listen and telling us where you're listening from West London, right underneath the Heathrow Northern Runway. And Abhay, every week we hear from you, so thank you so much from Pune in India. And David Stutton seems to be out in Abu Dhabi, where he says it's hot and humid. So thank you for listening in, all of you, and for commenting as well. Okay, now let's go to an airport that's not doing so well. Interesting story out of Gatwick last week that a single British Airways flight who had some trouble after landing on the runway and had to stay on the runway resulted in blocking that same runway. And that led to an astonishing 9 aircraft that were circling above to start squawking fuel emergencies and eventually 14 total diversions before the airport could be reopened. This is just such a shocking story to me for multiple reasons. I mean, why could they not get that aircraft off the runway quicker? Isn't there this thing called a tow truck and just pull it off the runway? Gatwick has 2 runways, as we've mentioned before, but they can't operate simultaneously because they are too close to one another. So this runway wasn't operating right. I guess it's because the aircraft was blocking it and its wings were overlapping. I don't know, but this is just such a shocking story. Can you imagine the cost of all this disruption because there's one aircraft stuck on the runway? So, and
I'm also shocked. Can you imagine, I always keep on saying there should be better connections between Heathrow and Gatwick and airports in London. And here is another reason. I can just picture the chaos after those 14 aircraft. Oh, gosh.
So, Ash, I'm looking forward to your comments.
It always surprises me how Gatwick doesn't do anything to take advantage of situations and just makes their situation worse and worse and worse. So if you ever had a chance to build your airport, make it better, take some of the flights away from Heathrow, bring it to Gatwick, which we've all been a fan of because I think it's necessary for them to not do that and then to have this issue come up. Shame on them. They could have done things better and they should do things better. So maybe what they need is another person to run the airports and do a good job of it. The current person probably is not doing a great job.
We are very sorry for all those who were affected, but that must have been a terrible, terrible day of travel. Interesting story, the next one. This is one that you brought to my attention, and before I saw it on LinkedIn, and this is the news that and I need to get this right because Omio is a travel app, and they've entered into an agreement to acquire Rail Europe, and they've also received further funding for expansion in Asia. There's a lot to unpack here because these are not necessarily very well. I mean, Rail Europe is known. Omio, not so much to me personally. I don't know them that well. For me, this is an unexpected move. I did not see this coming. And you brought this to my attention and you were quite excited about this development, right?
Yeah, this is big. Omio to me is I've been using them for a long time actually, and I'm very impressed with them on, technology wise. And I think it's exactly what Rail Europe needs. So you need the combination of that content and then some really good tech. And I think that Rail's got, all the stars are aligned really for doing a good job. We can work on standards. We can do this. We can do a much better job. I'm really excited about this. And I was also very excited about the Asian pan rail in there in the mix.
Fascinating.
Yeah. This is going to be good.
You've mentioned two things that I wouldn't normally associate in the same sentence, rail and standards, because, from my experience with rails, those don't exist. So if Omio can sort that out, I'd be all for it. And then you also mentioned something that Ash would never say, that the stars are aligned for rail. So Ash, what do you make of that?
My first thought was, who the heck is Rail Europe? Because no one knows.
Spin-off. It used to be owned by SNCF, and that is shock and horror, right? The French state-owned railway, but it was sold, and was privatized. Rail Europe.
Whoever bought it and privatized it did a really bad job of maintaining that brand. It sounds like a good brand, right? It shouldn't be right. Rail Europe, right? It makes all the sense in the world. I remember them from back 20 years ago, but since then I haven't heard of anything from them. And so, you can go buy something that doesn't work very well and bring it in and hopefully something goes well for you. But I think Omio probably is going to at some point grab the content and bring it into their travel app. Doesn't that make sense that they would bring that content in and sell it on Omio versus have this other thing called Rail Europe?
Yes, absolutely. We deal with agents who are struggling to book rail because it's all over the show, literally. Standards, station names, you name it, it's a mess. So again, if the opportunity is very rich here to standardize and offer a single interface to huge content and sell that very well.
Rail Europe hasn't done that because they have never advanced their technologies, but Trainline has been doing that for years now. So why do we need Rail Europe when we have Trainline?
I think it's a content question as to what Trainline has access to versus what Rail Europe has got access to. So, and then the next move after this would be Rail Europe and, Trainline coming together. That would be amazing. But it's a content question more than anything else.
So the governments have a special deal with Rail Europe and only give the content to them and not to anybody else because they're trying to control the pricing and all that kind of good stuff?
Yes. That's it.
So there lies the biggest problem, Rhiannon. And when you try to do that, how do you expect the consumer to want to buy your product and travel on rail? Taking a flight is so much easier. And now we come full circle back to the original problem, which is that for the amount of stuff that is talked about rail from Europe, the fact that they can't get the basics down, selling a product, that's just the basics, right? If you can't get that down, then you can't talk about all the other stuff you talk about. A rail is so great, rail is this, rail is that, because you make it impossible.
Omio, have you signed that deal yet? They might be told to retract. Go for it. I'm very excited about this. This is very big.
I'm very excited about it, yes.
And the Asia part is fascinating. Yes. And there's so many questions I have because think about the people traveling from here to Asia and Asia to here and connecting those and making the app similar and all that stuff. Yeah, it's very exciting.
And by the way, good luck with that because if you think rail in Europe is hard, wait until you get to Asia. Yeah. It is an impossibility. So I think they're going to need more than 10 million for that. I think they're going to need more than 10 billion.
Our T-shirt of the week is the stars are aligned for rail.
Yes, and I stick to that.
I stick to that.
And Ash is going to shoot those stars out of the sky with a SpaceX rocket.
Starlink, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Those stars are...
Okay, guys. So those were the list of stories on my list from last week. Do we have an extra story or two?
Yeah, I have a couple I can bring. So here in the U.S., they've started to put out a legislation around quiet skies. So they're calling it the Quiet Skies Act of 2026. And this has received a lot of bipartisan support. This is not going to be a difficult thing for them to push through. And the idea around this regulation or legislation, however you look at it, is to ban in-flight voice calls. So one of the things that's started to happen now with the great access to the internet on planes with Starlink is that the quality of calls has improved drastically. Before, people didn't take calls because it was just so hard. So by default, people didn't use it. But now with Starlink, it's become so much easier. So now they're putting this legislation in to say, hey, security, you are not allowed to make calls on the plane. This has received a lot of support from organizations like GBTA as well. We're going to hear about this quite a bit. And so I think this is a good move. What do you guys think?
I can't help but press the applause button on this one. This is amazing. I love it. I mean, I hate, people on their phones and stuff next to me on planes. It's so intrusive as well. I'm very surprised. I thought this was going to be about the opposite, to allow people to do it. But no, it's great.
I mean, can you imagine hearing somebody's conversation the whole time and then getting irritated and then the fights will ensue?
No, exactly. You're stuck with that. And when do you stand on that? People making calls on phones, on planes?
Oh, gosh, I would hate it. I'd hate it. It's
very interesting.
Just look at rail when you have to listen to that. That's where I go.
Rail.
Yeah, that's where I go for.
Luckily,
the quiet car.
Yeah, exactly. They have quiet coaches, right?
Yes,
that's the advantage. You can do that on a rail. You see, Ash, that's something you can do on a train, which you can't do on a plane.
You can say basically economy in the back can take calls, but people in the front cannot.
Dear.
Next story. So there was a lawsuit that occurred here in the U.S. against United Airlines for selling windowless window seats. So that lawsuit, United tried to get dismissed. So the update on that story is that the judge has denied the dismissal and said that the lawsuit will continue on. So we'll be hearing a lot more about this. And I've experienced this on planes where, you're thinking there's a window seat there, but there's a wall. For most people, that's not a big deal. But for somebody like me who has flying phobia, I like to be able to see outside the window because I need to have that visual in my head, calm myself down. So when you have that, it's a very uncomfortable feeling. I think that if you don't have a window next to that seat, it should be very clearly displayed.
It should be.
This is a windowless window seat.
Yeah. Agree with that. And I did not originally have an extra story, but I want to mention this one. It was quite funny. Well, not funny for those on the flight, but it was an interesting story that there was a TAP Air Portugal flight that pushed back from Lisbon. It was going to fly to London. And the ground crew noticed that they couldn't find their headsets, the big headsets they use when they talk to the pilots as they push back. And they basically forgot to take it off, and it went tangled up in the nose gear. It was flapping on the outside of the wheel as well as the plane was flying. And so the pilot had to divert to Porto to get that untangled and taken off, and then they had to take off again. So these things also happen. Can you imagine that ground crew and how they feel about that? Are those our stories for the week?
It's a wrap.
We are bang on time. So thank you for those joining us today. We really appreciate it. For all the comments, thank you so much. Don't forget, we are not going to do this next week, but we'll see you again early in August. So thank you to you both. Over to you, Anne.
Thanks, everyone, and see you in a couple of weeks. Over to you, Ash.
Thank you all for joining today's live recording of Linking the Travel Industry. We record this podcast live every week on Monday. We ask that you share this event with others that you know. Chances are high that if you enjoyed today's session, those that you know will as well. If you ever miss a show because of time zone or availability, the podcast will be available on businesstravel360.com. This is Linking the Travel Industry, signing off.